Hello and welcome. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about spiritual death, specifically how to survive if you had a very powerful experience the end of 2019. There was probably a noticeable big shift that happened for you right after the eclipse on December 25th, and you may still be recovering from that. Now, this, of course, is all going to depend on what happened in your astrology. If you're not clear on what was going on with you during that, you can go to astrology.thunderwizard.com and get a reading from me to find that out. So, as always, YouTube and I seem to be having some challenges when it comes to the replay of this. So while I'm getting started, I'm just going to try and find a way to get on to see the what's happening with the. Okay, so that should help me right there. All right, very good. All right, so I'll turn that off. Good. So now I can see myself while I'm talking to you. Make sure that everything's going all right. So, where to start with this? I can honestly say, all things considered, that this holiday period, starting from late September up until right at this moment, this has been the most challenging, painful, devastating holiday period I can remember. Now, bear in mind I'm saying, all things considered. There have been other holiday periods that have had pain, very intense pain, the loss of my partner. That's caused a couple of pretty painful holiday seasons. But this one, everything that combined together, it just was the perfect crucible for me to be forced to die to a lot of things within myself. Most notably, some remaining projections I had concerning relationships, concerning my own idea of myself. This was really where I felt very strongly the awareness that I'm coming into the last third of my life, and I'm beginning to think. I'm not. I look at people differently. I think differently. I'm thinking about my life differently, and so as I said, it's been the most challenging experience, all things considered, of my life. But I'm still here and I'm going strong, and I want to talk to you about dying to the self. This is something we have to go through all the time. I've had a pretty challenging life myself, and gone through a lot of challenges and difficulties, and had to do a lot of work on myself, had to go seek out help in lots of different ways, professionally and spiritually. And so that is one of the reasons that I've dedicated my life to being a spiritual guide and teacher and healer. Primarily, I do it for myself, because the best way to learn is to teach. So as I'm doing today, I'm talking about those things which I am facing and struggling through, and that's a really healing thing for me to do, is to teach about it, because I end up telling myself what I need to hear, and it's really not just me. It's interesting is that I'm just another person. If somebody connects with me outside of my role as a spiritual teacher, I think it's probably fairly disappointing because when I don't have the teacher mantle on, I'm just as human as screwed up as anybody else. And I watch myself from time to time. I'll watch things recordings I've made, just to see how I come across, and I'm like, wow, didn't realize I knew that. And I hear myself say things that I find profound, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like me. Well, the reason for that is, among other things, is that a true teacher, if they're teaching, they are a channel for higher beings that teach through you. So, lots of times I think I know what I'm talking about, but it's really not coming 100% from me. Of course, my experience and my knowledge and my personality and everything is part of that vehicle. So it's not like I'm completely unfamiliar with it, but I listen and I go, wow. So that's one of the reasons that I do this, is because when I'm teaching and I'm not involved in myself, and I'm teaching from to the best of my ability, a place of without any agenda, then the ancestors and the gods are able to teach me what I need to know by just letting me, by just speaking through me. So it's one of the reasons that I avoid having any personal contact with people whom I've either taught or done services for, is because once that connection is made, they're connecting to something else. And if I try and get in there and say, okay, now I want to be your friend or whatever, it tends to be very disappointing for both parties, and I end up destroying opportunities to be helpful to people. So that's been my experience with that so far. So we're talking about death of the ego. Ego is something that is absolutely necessary, but it is something that needs to be continuously refined. Ego is the Latin word, it's pronounced ego, just like the waffle. Ego is the Latin word for I, and in a sentence you would say, ego sum, I am. Recently somebody mistook that and thought I was quoting Descartes, which is cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. Ergo and ego are two different words. Ego is also the word for I in Greek, classical Greek. If you wanted to say I am in classical Greek, you would say ego eimi. So why am I getting all wrapped up in nonsense wordplay? Well, the ego is necessary. You can't exist without a self. You can't. I've learned that in a way that I just couldn't possibly recreate the depth to which I have learned that. And someday I'll talk to you about that. But human beings cannot function without a sense of self. You can't. So the spiritual idea of getting rid of the ego, when I hear that, most of the time the feeling I get is that this is somebody who is in pain, who wants to use pseudo-spirituality to escape their pain, and they want to annihilate themselves. And this is what happens with drug addiction. By the way, this is another reason why I do not recommend using power plants to achieve any kind of spiritual state, because there is, I would say, more than 75% of the time, and I'm being gracious here, people use chemicals to force themselves into an altered state, and they consciously think I'm doing it to have a spiritual experience, but on an unconscious level, the part of your mind you're not aware of, that is the real reason behind it. On an unconscious level, people want to annihilate their ego because they are in pain. And the spiritual pathway is not one of escape or denial. Western society, and especially, I say modern, kids these days, it's just, when people are young. When people are young, they're inexperienced and they're immature. And so it was the same when I was a kid, in the 70s growing up. Spirituality was the same, and people thought that dropping acid and smoking weed, there's no difference, except now people are doing other things like, using different chemicals, but it's the same thing. And you have a Western society which is materialistic and doesn't create an opportunity for people to experience, true connection and interaction with themselves, with nature, with the universe. Especially now, people, get their entire identity through uh, interacting with devices. And so there's so much emptiness and so much unfulfillment and so much pain and black hole inside their gut that people want to annihilate themselves. And so they take some kind of chemical which will force them to have an altered experience, and it feels like a spiritual experience because anything is better than not have, anything is better than their normal state of being. And I learned this the hard way. I like, most of the kids my age, especially messed up kids like I was. I did all kinds of drugs in the 70s, and THC was one of my absolute favorites. And my experience of when I did THC, that I would feel this blissful peace, and it felt very meditative and spiritual. And then later on in life, I had, because of I was going through a divorce, I had some physical pain, which was purely mental. There was nothing physically wrong with me. It's tendonitis and back pain and all that kind of stuff. Most of the time is just unresolved anger and pain. So I was doing that, and somebody recommended, you ought to try doing some THC. That really helps with it. And I gave it a try. Now, this whole time I had been doing energy work, deep, powerful energy work, meditation, true energy work, true shamanic experiences. And I hated the THC experience. I hated it. It felt like I was under attack. It was horrible. And I was like, what happened? I thought this was supposed to feel good. Well, it's because I was no longer in that state that I had been when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I was trying to annihilate my ego because the pain was more than I could handle. And anything was better than living in that pain. And so I realized that people who, whenever somebody comes on here and they want to talk to me about how THC makes them more spiritual and they do it to meditate, I know without a shadow of a doubt that you are trying to annihilate your ego because you are in pain and you are seeking to escape your pain through some sort of pseudo-spiritual scenario. But spirituality, true spirituality, and I'm talking energy work as well. You want to become a powerful energy sorcerer? You can do it. But it will not happen without truly facing your pain. You can't do it. You have to face that ego, and you have to go through that ego death. There's no way around it. And unfortunately, the more dysfunction that you grew up with, the more painful it will be. Because in order to survive the dysfunction of wherever, whatever your growing up scenario was, in order to survive that, you have to create defense mechanisms to defend your ego. Those defense mechanisms which create your dysfunction later, your mental or emotional issues that you have to go get help for later. When you're when you're a little kid in that hell, you need those defense mechanisms, otherwise you will not survive. So the ironic thing is the very thing that you need to defend your ego ends up being the very thing that prevents you from having happiness and from spiritual growth later. And that's why people have to go to spiritual teachers, and they have to go to therapists, and they have to go to 12-step groups, because they have to learn how to then learn how to really die to that ego. And the whole idea of dying to the ego is not about ego eradication. The whole point of dying to the ego is to trim away the part of the ego that doesn't serve you, so you can get to the authentic self. You must have an authentic self, or you will not be able to function. And I mean, you will not be able to hold down a job. You will not be able to even know who you are. You will not be able to have a relationship. The ego is the hard drive of the person. And without a hard drive, it doesn't matter what software you put in. It has nothing to write the program onto. Your emotions are like software. They fly through your head all the time. But those thoughts, those feelings, those intentions, you want to talk about intentions and manifesting, those intentions cannot manifest if they can't be written into an identity. Without the identity, your meditations for prosperity are meaningless. Because what ends up happening is that your ego, like the hard drive of a computer, the software, the messages get written onto that. Then as you go forward into time, you take actions based on what has been hardwired into you from that software. Without an ego, without a firm, authentic ego, you cannot take action in the future, which means you will not be able to manifest what you want. This is another reason why I now more than ever, again, someday I will get specific. I can't do it right now. I mean, I can, I'm just choosing not to, until I know that I can do it without causing anybody damage. But the law of attraction now, I'm more so than ever, is extremely toxic. It's toxic. It's not just incomplete, it's toxic. Because you'll find this, people who are really, really into the law of attraction, these are people who are extremely damaged and who are seeking to escape themselves, and they want somebody to come along and say, listen, all you have to do is feel good, and if you feel good, good things will happen. Because what they want is they want to run away from all of the pain and the imperfections within themselves, and they want to annihilate themselves so that they can feel good. Same thing as taking drugs, same idea. It's incredibly toxic. There is no spiritual growth without facing yourself. So in this past eclipse, hang on one second here. In this past eclipse that we just went through, we went through potentially a death in 6 areas of our life. December 25th, the eclipse was being controlled by the south node of the moon, which is Ketu. Ketu represents death, represents leaving the physical body, represents destruction of the illusion of this physical world that we live in. And so wherever Ketu sits, he represents the destruction of the illusion of the physical world. And so when we're talking about destruction of the illusion, I'm not talking about the Matrix kind of illusion. I'm talking about the things associated which do not propel you forward spiritually. You have to have illusion, illusion doesn't mean it's not real. Your interactions with other people are real, even though you are dealing with their avatar. Very real. But it is an illusion. That doesn't mean it's not real. So again, you have to have a more sophisticated, more mature understanding that it's not an either or. It's not all false and it's not all real. It is an illusion that has real consequences within it. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as karma. I forgot what I was saying. Must have been important though. Oh, we're dying. We depending on what was going on in your chart, there was potentially 6 areas in which you were dying. You had Sun was in there, which is your identity, your core identity. So you may have gone through a death in terms of your ego identity. The Moon was in there, which represents your mind, not your intellect, your mind, the part of you that has emotions and reflects meditatively and connects. Your mind could have gone through a death. The intellect, which is Mercury, which is your ability to think, your ability to make decisions, your ability to come to conclusions. I spend a lot of time telling people to get out of their head, because the intellect can be used as a way of escaping emotions as well. But the intellect is the interface between the soul and this 3-dimensional video game we call human life. And so the intellect has to take that information and make decisions on up, down, right, left, red, green, blue. You may have gone through a death in terms of your intellect. Your spirituality, which is Jupiter. Jupiter was in that same cluster of planets during the eclipse. So your spirituality, you may have come to a death in terms of your spiritual thoughts, your religion. Venus, which is love and relationships and pleasure. Venus is all about the physical world. So when Ketu and Venus comes together, it can create a lot of difficulties because Ketu will then destroy your ability to enjoy the illusion, enjoy food, enjoy sex, enjoy love, enjoy relationships. So what else do we miss? So Saturn. So Saturn and Ketu, when they come together, just the two of them, it creates a very challenging experience where you have to die and face your lessons. You have nothing between you and your karmic lessons, and Saturn, the judge, says you're going to learn this lesson or it's going to kill you. Those are your two choices. You can learn the lesson or die. Pick one. You put that together with Ketu. Ketu says, yeah, let's kill him. Let's just take him completely out of this illusion. And so your karmic lessons will come down hard. So I think I mentioned all six. Maybe I didn't, but in case I did, you get the point. This could have been a very powerful, concentrated experience. It certainly was for me. As soon as all these planets started lining up for me in my fifth house, holy crap. I mean, and I really want to get into it, but I'm not going to do it just yet. So before I take questions here, what I'm going to say is, if you are recovering from that, then this is the time to reflect. This is the time to reflect and look back at your projections on what it is you think you want from life, your illusions about what life is supposed to give you, what people are supposed to give you, and to really reflect on the pain we cause ourselves when we create expectations on things we think we want, and the universe doesn't provide it the way we want it to, because it's we're not focusing on what's in our best interest. And since this eclipse has happened, and I went through a tremendous pain and transformation in regard to my expectations on relationships and old things, even from childhood and past relationships that I was trying to recreate, I learned. I got smacked down harder than I ever had in my entire life, without a doubt. And so I've been seeing, this has all been my projection. The things I've been mourning about have been all my projection. And even love itself, I've come to realize, is a projection, and that a true love relationship is when two people choose to co-sign each other's projections. I really want to get into it, but I'm not going to do that in this video. So, before I look at it, I can see that there are some comments and some questions. If you're new to the channel, I only want questions. I'm not interested in your comments. I will bypass them. If you are a troll, I will block you. If you have a question, I want you to write the word question in all caps, and then you can write normally after that. Make sure you have a full sentence. Don't just throw out something and I have to try and figure out what you're trying to say. Have a full, well thought out question so that I can answer it. Try to limit your questions to things that I teach. I'm not going to talk about other teacher or other teachings. And don't get your feelings hurt, because if I think that there's some nonsense involved in your question, or if I sense that what you really want to know is something other than your question, I'm going to come at you. It's just the way I am. So that's what we're going to do. So let's take a look and see what's going on with the questions here. So, Crone Woman Walking question, Teacher Mahadeva. How does one know when they have gone through ego death? I'm not really sure how to answer that question. I mean, if you're asking that question, it kind of pretty much answers itself, don't you think? That's like if you're in the middle of if you're born into a hurricane and you're asking, how do I know when the hurricane is over? It's obviously not over. So I don't know how to answer that. I don't know. I don't know that ever really happens. And again, now I'm starting to get to the crux of your question. Why do you need to have that be finished? That tells me you want out, escape. So the way out is through. The way out of the ego death is to dive into it. Don't avoid it. So if you're looking for a way out, that's the problem. Trying to escape is creating false ego, which then has to be destroyed. So face the pain. And does feeling like death qualify? Well, no. I mean, you feel like you're dying. You feel you're in pain. No. Again, depending on how much dysfunction you had and how much you have been operating, out of your integrity, which is again the whole irony of defense mechanisms when you're born into a tragic home life. Those defense mechanisms then, as you take it into adulthood, create more pain and misery, and so you have to then die to all of the pain and misery you've caused yourself, and it creates a greater denial. So the longer you stay in that, the harder it is to die to it. So if you feel like death, does that qualify that you're out? Well, no, because sometimes you can be 100%. Take a drug addict. If I use that same analogy, and they're doing heroin on a daily basis, and I tell them, well, it's going to be really painful to go through withdrawals, and they say, oh, so if I feel like I'm really dying, does that mean I'm out, as they're putting the needle in? So again, what I hear in the question is you want out of the feeling, and I get that, and I feel for you, but you got to deal with what's in front of you. Stop. It's easy for me to say, because we all want to feel better, but you feel however you feel. And so one of the biggest lessons about this is just probably the most important life lesson there is. It doesn't have to feel good, and you need to learn how to take actions that are constructive regardless of how you feel. And majority of people, and especially people who are immature, they only do things that make them feel good. And I have nothing against feeling good. Trust me, my whole life is based on feeling good. But you have to learn what are the constructive actions you need to take, and you need to sometimes take actions that are going to make you feel worse, not better. And the point is not to be focusing on how to feel or escape a feeling, but how to find what is the constructive, healthy action. Because eventually those constructive, healthy actions will start to create real good feelings. And unfortunately, you want to become Mr. Olympia, it's going to hurt. You're going to have to go through a lot of strain and pain. And when you learn how to understand that the pain is good, the good kind of pain, because you're taking actions towards getting healthy, then that makes it a lot easier. But it's always going to be challenging. So there really isn't a question there. You're really just telling me I'm in pain and I don't want to be in pain anymore, and I can't tell you when the pain will stop. I can only tell you, what to do to get through it. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so Matthew V. Dace, if you have a question, please ask the word question. Try to limit your questions to what we're talking about. But you asked this question, is it okay to be homosexual? I mean, that's very sad that you have to ask that. So the rest of your question is, or is it that the sign of a demon inside me, like people keep telling me? Well, who are these people? So Matthew, you strike me as a very young person. You're probably a teenager. You're probably in a religious home where they take you to church, and your born-again Christian friends are telling you that homosexuality is a sin, and if you're attracted to people of the same sex, that's the devil tempting you. So there's nothing wrong. It's not just okay. That's how you were created. When I was in college, I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian home, and I went to Bible camp and Bible college and all that garbage. And I didn't understand homosexuality, and after I got out of that and I met up with somebody that I had known in college who was homosexual, I'm not homosexual, so I personally don't have a personal understanding of it, so I came to him and I wanted to ask him about it. And he said, this is who I am, this is how I was created. It's not just okay, it's not just a choice, this is how I was made to be. So if you are a homosexual, that's how, if you believe in God, that's how God created you. So it's not just okay, it's who you are, and you owe it to the world to be authentic to yourself. And if you're still living at home and you have to live with your parents who are telling you that you have a demon in you because you're homosexual, or your church is, you're just going to have to hang on until you can become an adult and move out and get away from those people. Okay? All right. Let's see what else. Please do me a favor, people. If somebody asks me a question, I don't need you to chime in and answer for them. I appreciate that. The reason is because every time somebody just makes a comment, it builds up all, and I have to scroll through all of the, Lady Drasman says, paragraph, beautiful things. I have to scroll through all that to find another question. So let's just focus on the questions. Indigo Moon, you can see a question there. What is your opinion on ayahuasca for self-discovery? You probably just heard me go off about using chemicals. Same thing about that. If you haven't done ayahuasca, I don't recommend doing it. First and foremost, in order for that to work, it is my belief based on my observation that you have to be brought up in that indigenous society, because then your brain and your psyche will be formed in such a way to benefit from it. Westerners who are not part of that society, they go and they do this, they are coming at it from a completely different perspective. They're coming at it from their wounds, and I'm not going to say that it isn't helpful for some people, but for most it's pretty much a waste of time. Ayahuasca itself is a poison. That's why, if you've never done it before, what ends up happening is you end up vomiting and diarrhea. That's your body saying this is a poison. It's trying to expel the poison. That's why people hallucinate. You hallucinate because you've put the body under a near-death experience. So no, there are so many different ways to do it. The Taoists in China, the East Indians in India, in their beginnings of their spiritual teachings thousands of years ago, they used different kinds of hallucinogens, and they both stopped doing it, and they stopped doing it for the same reason, is because as they got more and more sophisticated in their meditation and their energy practices like yoga and qigong and things like that, they started to find out that the body creates the DMT, which is the whole point of ayahuasca, is to get the DMT in there. But you have to take all this poison to make that happen. But you can create the active ingredient ayahuasca by doing yoga, by doing certain types of high-level meditations, Negong, Qigong. This will create DMT. So, you can do that, and there's no downside. Whenever you take an external chemical, there's always a huge downside, and it's extremely toxic to the body, and some people have died from it. Some people have had permanent damage from it. So if you haven't done it, don't do it now. If you really want to know what that is, see on my thing here, it says qigong.thunderwizard.com, that last link, go there. That will give you DMT. It'll take a little longer, but the experience will be more empowering, it will be healthy, and it will actually be real. Because the last thing I'll say about hallucinogens is that you run the risk of simply experiencing your own delusions. So you're having a spiritual experience, but the question is, are you having a spiritual experience of, communicating with the gods? Or are you having a spiritual experience of simply going to your own unconscious mind and walking around in that? Because there's a whole world underneath your conscious mind. There's a whole universe, infinite universe down there. But it's your unconscious. And if you're not aware, then all you're going to be doing is walking around in your own fears. That's why people have bad trips. Or your own delusions. Sometimes you go down there and you discover yourself. But you don't have to do that. There are much more powerful, beneficial methods to do it. And I know because I've experienced both. So I can tell you from personal experience. All right, let's see here. Yeah, Matt, again, please, guys, don't chime in. Don't start giving people advice. I don't. People are asking me. If they want to ask you, they'll ask you. All right, let's see. Again, I got to scroll through everybody talking. I don't want to do that. I just want to see your questions. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Come on, guys. So you guys must be new to the channel. Black Earth Productions, welcome everybody. You should go check out his channel. Black Earth Productions with a Z.com is his website. Let's see what else. Yeah, trying to get to the questions. All right. Calden Edwards question: how should I apply this death to my life now? I don't know. What did you die to? That's such a general question. I'm not that psychic that I can climb in and know specifically what I don't know. How should I apply this death to my life? What were you dying to? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I'm sorry. I just don't know enough about you to be able to answer that. Superman question: what I can remember is that I died of flu in Sagittarius arm, and now I am alive at Orion's spur. Is that Mandela effect? So Superman, you had, what was this, a dream? You're not telling me anything about the ego death. You're telling me about some, I don't know what Sagittarius arm signifies to your unconscious. What does that mean? You died of flu. I don't know what that means to you. It's great that you had that visionary experience, but to answer the other guy's question, how do you apply it? You've got to apply it in the real world. How can you apply that in the real world? You died of flu and Sagittarius arm, and now you're alive at Orion's spur. Does that knowledge help you live a better life, make more money, create better relationships, be healthier? Or is it just an entertaining vision? If you're going to have a shamanic vision, you got to know how to interpret it and apply it to your real life. Otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. What does it mean? I don't know what it means. Is that Mandela effect? I don't know. It just sounds like you had a vision. I don't know what it means. People over spiritualize visions and dreams. There are three kinds of dreams. Your brain is constantly, every single moment of the day, your subconscious mind is taking in information and is storing it. And then when you sleep, your unconscious mind takes out all the files it doesn't need. Oh, you had a car crash that day, or we're going to keep that file because that's important. Okay, I looked and I saw a pretty flower. Okay, we don't need that. Let's get rid of that memory. And that's the first kind of dream. Just going through your daily events and just taking away stuff that you don't need to remember. Second kind of dream is a spiritual experience where you actually do have a spiritual experience. They're very rare, but you will have a dream where you go outside your body and you meet Odin and talk to him, and that's a spiritual experience. Third kind of a dream is just simply experiencing your unconscious fears or fantasies. You dreamed that you had sex with a supermodel. That's your unconscious fantasy. You dreamt you were being consumed by an evil, ugly monster that looks a lot like your boyfriend. That's your unconscious fear. Those are the three kinds of dreams. Just because you had an experience, it doesn't mean anything, unless you can take that knowledge and apply it. So this is again why people, take drugs and they think they're having a spiritual experience. Yeah, man, I went to this other world and there were fish people with 6 eyes, man. And well, who cares? What are you going to do with that? How does that help your life? Spirituality has one purpose, which is to make this life better. If you're not making this life better, you're indulging in your narcissism and you're trying to escape. And that's not what I'm here to help you with. So Superman, and I don't know how to answer that question. I have no idea what it means for you. Richard T. question: how do I die to ego? Could you be more general? What do you mean, how do you die to ego? Why are you asking the question? If you're asking the question and you're not being forced to die to your ego, why do you care? this, what I'm sharing with you happened to me is because the universe forced it on me. I take that back. My soul created a scenario where it felt as though I was being forced to die to myself, but that's because my soul was ready to move on and learn some other things. So how do you die? Do you want to manufacture it? It'll happen. Just leave it alone. It'll happen on its own. We talk about this death to the ego and die to the self. That is New Age garbage. Not that dying to the self isn't real. It's that somebody is better because I've died to my ego, man. I mean, who cares? It's part of life. Why do you need to manufacture? There's nothing spiritual about trying to manufacture some egoless state. And your question reminds me of what goes on a lot when people talk about love and light. Everything is love and light, and I just don't get angry anymore. And so when you're with these people and you have a real feeling because they did something unconscious and hurtful to you, and you go, hey man, that wasn't cool what you just did, they're going to go, oh hey, I'm not going to go to that level. There's a lot of hostility coming from you, man, and I don't go. Those are people who are just in complete denial. They've got this supercilious spirituality connected to the idea of not having any negative feelings. So dying to the self is the same thing. People talk about the self as being bad and ego being bad and dying to the ego. You'll die to the ego when it's time, and it will be a challenging, painful experience. You shouldn't go looking for it. So why are you asking me how to do it? Tells me you don't understand what I'm talking about, and that's okay. How do I die to myself? Is it facing fears and unconscious agendas? Yeah, but you don't do that if you're just going through life and life is good. There's no motivation for you to face your fears and unconscious agendas. If you're having challenging relationships, let's say you keep, Richard, I'm assuming you're a man, let's say you keep attracting women who are really destructive to you, then the pain of that makes you go, okay, what are my agendas here? Because I'm obviously attracting the same kind of women. So what is my agenda? Oh, my agenda is I'm looking for somebody who reminds me of my mom and also looks like a supermodel, and I'm making that my agenda, and it's biting me in the ass. Maybe I should think more about my selfish agendas that aren't serving. That's a way to die to yourself, but it happens because practically trying to live your life and make your life better, you have things to do it. Asking me, in the general question, how do I do it, doesn't mean anything, because if you're asking that, it means you're not really being forced to do it. So just enjoy your life. It's the great thing. You can enjoy your life. If your life is going good, enjoy it. And when it's time, the universe and Saturn will bring the karma, and it'll come and squish his thumb on you, and you'll be forced to look at it. Or you'll choose to keep following your narcissism and the things that feel good that aren't helping you, and then you'll get deeper into it if you listen to Rahu. So the question of how, I'm not really understanding why you're asking. Anyway, I told you guys, I might not say what you want to hear today. Let's see, what else? Grown woman walking question, how long does the eclipse last? And what does my Vedic chart have to say about the eclipse? Well, that's a whole hour-long session, so I'm not going to pull up your chart and do that, because you're an apprentice. And anybody, by the way, if you want to work with me on a monthly or weekly or bi-weekly basis, you go up here to thunderwizard.com, okay, and the top link up there, all the way at the top, thunderwizard.com, and you can become an apprentice and you can work with me. Crone Woman Walking is one of my apprentices, and we work together once a month. We should be working more often, but anything's better than nothing. So we'll look at that next time. How long does the eclipse last? Well, the eclipse is over. So what has happened is that as we were coming towards the eclipse, what was happening? Okay, so the nature of the eclipse, what Ketu does is Ketu is the great revealer. Rahu is the great concealer. Rahu, the north node, is the trickster who puts the smoke in front of your eyes to tempt you to get yourself into trouble so that you'll learn through the school of hard knocks. Ketu is the liberator, but Rahu and Ketu are both malefics, which means they always bring pain and challenge with them. So even though Ketu is the liberator, it's going to be a painful liberation. He tears it away from you. So it's very painful. So what was happening as we were going towards the eclipse is that our illusions and delusions were gaining strength because they're about to be removed. So like anything else, it wants to keep itself alive. So you probably had an experience of getting deeper and deeper into your delusions and the pain, and so since Ketu is coming, then you would have felt the pain of it. You know, if you were a drug addict, it would get to the point where the drugs aren't working anymore, and all that's happening is that you're sick and going through withdrawals, and the pain of that would get you to the point where you want to quit, right? So the eclipse has happened, Ketu has come and painfully torn away the bandage, and now, you know, the nerves are just like this, but you're really starting to become aware of, holy crap, that's what I've been doing to myself. That was my illusion. Doesn't mean you're free, because you can still want to try and run back. In fact, I've had that experience. The things that I have had torn away from me that I had to deal with, since then I had an awareness right on New Year's Eve, as it happened. A huge awareness about what I was doing and what my delusions were. But then since then, there have been those same delusions have popped up. And it's almost like, okay, you want to try again? And I go, nope, I can see you for what you are. I'm not walking down that path again. So that, it doesn't mean you're out of the woods. It means that you can still be in denial and try and go after it. It'll just be worse than ever, though. Or it won't have any of the, there won't be any payoff to it. So, how long does the eclipse last? I don't know. The effects will probably last for a while. It's, you know, it's the reveal has happened, and now we have to sit through that and continue to learn. So again, the questions you're asking me sound like you wanting to escape. The only reason to ask how long will it last is because you don't want to keep feeling it. So my answer to you is stop worrying about getting away from the pain and ask yourself the questions: what do I need to do to improve and to be constructive? Matt Jones, question: how have you seen Levette's channel? I don't know who Levette is, but Matt, why are you asking me about somebody else? That's disrespectful to me. You're on my channel. You should be asking me about something I teach. If you're not interested in what I teach, go watch Levette's channel. And you're asking me to potentially make judgments about somebody I don't know. You're putting me in a position I might say bad things about him and I don't know them. So you're asking me to disrespect whoever Levette is, right? If you want to get a good response from me, ask me questions about things I teach. Richard T. question: is sacrifice? I'm assuming that's sacrificing. Is sacrificing the self to the self ego death? Yeah, that's what Odin did. What needs to be sacrificed? Is it attachments, false unconscious beliefs? So you're asking all of these questions. Why? If you're asking the question, it means that you're not experiencing it. And if you're not experiencing it, why force yourself? When the time comes and you need to die to yourself, then you can answer it. Are you asking the question because you don't want to miss out? You want to be spiritual, and it's spiritual to die to yourself and be like Odin? Just give it time. It'll happen. And when it starts happening, then you'll ask intelligent questions, because they'll be about what you're going through, and you'll be wanting to know questions how to get through the ego death you're experiencing. So if you're not experiencing the ego death, or you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. It's like a colorblind person trying to ask, what does orange look like? There's no way you can know that until you go through it. Koya Moon, question: should we get permission from a person before sending them loving, protective energy? I'm hesitating because that's a really good question. Why are you doing it? If it's your child, it is your responsibility to send them loving, protective energy. In fact, if you have a child, you should be doing mantras for your child. You should be doing Ganesha mantras for your child. That's part of your job. But if it's somebody who isn't your child, then my first reaction is that you're codependent and you're wanting to save somebody else. And the thing about codependence is it's really a projection. You're trying to save them because they're experiencing something that you feel on an unconscious level. So the best thing you can do for somebody else is heal yourself. In fact, that's how people get healed. If you know anything about Huna and Dr. Hugh Lin, go look him up. He healed people of mental illness by healing himself. He would look at himself. He would look at people who were mentally ill, because that, when he was given patients to work with, and whatever judgment came up in him about them, like, oh my God, they're so sick, he would then go and heal that within himself, because they were parts of him. So he would heal himself. He wouldn't think about them at all, and they would get healed. So should you get permission? I mean, you can. This is a good time to talk about the distance healing that I'm doing. I just started a new service which is starting to gain ground, which is doing distance healing, energyhealing.thunderwizard.com. And there have been some people who have gotten back to me who have given me some feedback. Now, a couple people have come back and given me feedback about experiences they've had. And by the way, that's not why I do it. If you get an energy healing from me, I make no promises that you're going to have any kind of experience whatsoever. But people are getting back to me saying that, at least some people are getting back to me saying they've had some experiences. But there was at least a couple of people who did it for the wrong reasons, and I didn't find out until afterwards. And if, in other words, somebody wanted somebody else to be healed, but for the completely wrong reasons. I won't get into it, but very selfish reasons. And once I found that out, I said, I wish I had known that, because I never would have agreed to do that for you. Because it should be about your own healing. And now that's, people have given me, have had me do energy distance empowerments for other people, and that can definitely work, especially for children or people like that. But the true method of healing that I do is I'm sending you energy so that you'll face yourself. You'll face the limitations within yourself. You'll face your own ego, because the idea is that any imbalance in your life, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, financial, it means that there's an imbalance within you. And in order to fix that imbalance, you have to look at yourself. I was sharing about this in another video I just recently did, but I know two people who are high-level masters. High level. They know everything that they need to know about energy work, about the same concepts I teach, that it's all an inside job. You heal yourself, and taking responsibility and facing your ego. But they both had some blind spots, and life came at them with some blind spots, and they weren't able to have complete awareness and balance in those areas, and they both got cancer. High level masters. So just because you're a high level master doesn't mean that you're bulletproof. You've got to be willing to look at yourself and always be healing yourself. So do you need to get permission? I don't know. I'm not so worried about whether or not you need permission as to why you're doing it. Because most of the time, let's say it's a husband and he's an alcoholic, and you're sending him positive energy so he can just feel better, because then when he does, then he'll give you the love you've always wanted, that's not going to help him, because you're coming from your own selfishness. So the question is, why are you wanting to send energy to somebody? Is it because you want them in your life and you want them to give you something? Are they a child? Are they a family member? Are they a spouse? Are they a significant other? Then you need to look at yourself as to why they're not giving you what you want. Are they sick just because they stubbed their toe? Or are they alcoholics? Or are they, the question is, if somebody, and I don't know your situation, Koya, so I don't know. It could be very innocent. It's just, it sounds codependent to me when I hear it. And you say protective energy. Protection from what? That, again, that sounds codependent. Unless it's your 10-year-old kid. That's a different story. Right? So my honest response is, you don't need to get people's permission to send them loving energy. But, if you have to ask the question, it sounds to me like it's codependent. Part of you is saying that you're coming from a selfish perspective. The thing about codependence is that it's really insidious, because people think I'm just here giving and loving other people, when in reality they're just needy and they want other people to give them what they want. So they just give them things and sacrifice and love. I loved him forever and he didn't give me what I wanted. Well, then you should have been with somebody else. You weren't loving yourself. Love yourself first and let the universe take care of other people. The universe is perfectly capable of loving and protecting whomever it is. So you're not that important that you're going to magically give them the protection that they need. Okay? People come to me and they ask me to do an energy healing. They are, number one, I have their permission because they're the ones coming to me, so they obviously are giving me permission. But they are also wanting to heal themselves. And so, they'll get, if you get a healing from me, I'll send you a big meditation and information so you know that it's about you. All I'm doing is I'm sending you energy so you can do the facilitation and healing on yourself. If you're looking for me to snap my fingers and make your problems go away, go look somewhere else. I'm not going to do that for you. I'm giving you the energy so you can heal yourself. There's no such thing as healing that isn't self-healing anyway. So even if you did have the ability, Koya, to send them energy which would push them over the edge and make them heal, it would only be because they wanted it. If they don't want it, it don't matter what you do. You can't help them. You're not that powerful. You're only infinite in terms of yourself. You're not infinite when it comes to other people. Okay? So again, I don't know your scenario, why you're asking the question. It just comes across as codependent to me, so that's why I'm responding that way. All right, so sorry, I have to scroll through all of the people who aren't asking questions. Yep. And if I find that somebody isn't honoring what I'm asking to do, and they just keep throwing and talking to others, I'll block you just so that I can get to the questions. Crone Woman Walking question: when is level 3 Celestial Qigong camp? It's a good question. I don't know yet. I'm moving again. So I'm moving back to where I was, which actually I had everything I needed. I have a place to teach there. And so thank you for asking that and reminding me. If all goes well, it may be coming up, well, at least I'll start creating it coming up soon. But thanks for asking. All right, where it's going again? Trying to find the. I wish. Yeah, please don't talk to each other, because then I got to do this. Indigo Moon question: traditional astrology versus Vedic. By traditional, you mean Western. Vedic is also traditional. It's just as old. Western astrology and Vedic astrology are both 2,000 years old, and both of them are based on an earlier astrological science from a city-state that existed in Afghanistan, which no longer exists because it was swallowed up by Muslim conquerors. Traditional astrology versus Vedic. I'm Leo in traditional and Cancer in Vedic. Some have the opinion traditional is for this incarnation, and Vedic is your astral or spiritual sign, so to speak. Well, let me just demolish that. Look, astrology is a science or it's not. A science is an exact science, and your chart is the calculation of where the planets were when you were born. Vedic astrology and Western astrology at this point in history are off by 24 degrees. So you say you're a Leo in traditional, but see, you don't even know what you're talking about here, because in Western, which you're calling traditional, Western uses the sun sign as your sign. So you're a Leo sun sign in Western, and you're a Cancer rising in Vedic, because Vedic uses the rising sign, not the sun sign, for your sign. So you've got two things you don't understand what's going on there. Those are the two main differences. So traditional astrology, which Western astrology is a calculation, and the angle of the calculation is off. And 2,000 years ago, it didn't matter, because whether you were using the sidereal calculation or the tropical calculation, you got the same result. So that was part of the problem. What has happened over past 2,000 years is that every, I forget how many, 70 years, 72 years or something like that, a Western goes off by 1 degree. So as time goes on, your Western chart is getting further and further away from the actual calculation of what was hitting you when you were born, what light from the stars are hitting you. So this nonsense about, Vedic is one thing, and I mean, it's either an exact science or it's not. And if it's not an exact science, then it's off. So I tell people, don't even bother with Western. And I know, I've got some good friends who listen who are Western astrologers, and it's not personal. I just, it's either an exact science or it isn't. So what you've been told is nonsense. It's just double talk of people trying, people don't want to be the bad person, and they don't want to say anything mean or bad about somebody else. And there's a lot of Western astrologers out there, and people don't want to give up what they know. It's like martial arts. People would come to train with me for martial arts, and they had trained in some other style, and they were really good at it. And they would come in, and I would show them a move, and they'd say, "Oh no, I have to stand like this." And I'd say, "No, in this style, you can't do that. You get your ass kicked. If you want to train with me, you have to forget everything you think you knew. Otherwise, I can't teach you." Same thing with astrology. I mean, some people don't want to give it up. Sorry, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. It's just, it's either a science or it's not. So pick one. What else? So Onyx Stallion, if you want to ask a question, please write the word question. I don't see that. I'm assuming this is a question. Would two boys left alone as toddlers ever develop an ego or identity? No, because they die. Toddlers cannot fend for themselves. But I've learned a lot about the ego, which is really important. I won't get too deep into it, but holy crap, it has changed my whole view about dysfunction and mental illness and spirituality. It has taught me so much about spirituality, and has taught me about why there are people that no matter how hard I try, I just can't motivate them to take action. And that's nobody listening to me now. I'm talking about people in the past who I just beat my head against the wall and I couldn't get them to take any action. As soon as you're 5 days old, you begin to manipulate your parents. You learn how to do things with facial features and other things, sounds, in order to get them to meet your needs. When an infant, all the way up through toddler, like all the way up to 4 years old, during that period, if the parents do not respond to the child's needs, the child never develops an ego. So this whole thing about getting rid of the ego, again, that's why you have to have an ego. If you don't have an ego, you cannot function. You cannot function. And this is what creates narcissists, like full-blown narcissists. This is what creates serial killers. This is what creates people with cluster B personality disorders, borderline personality disorders. They didn't get the nurturing and attention, and or there was trauma that happened to them when they were infants up to the age of 4, and they have no sense of self. And it's an incredibly painful disease to go through, and it's even more destructive to be on the other end of it. That's why, if you get into a relationship with any of them, a cluster B personality, it's worse than anything you've ever experienced. It's worse than, having, the crazy ex who cheated on you. It's worse than that. It's actual, they do use spiritual harm. They're as close to demons as you can find in human flesh. So to answer your question, 2 boys left alone as toddlers, if they survived, they would grow up to be crazy axe murderers. They would have no empathy for other people. They would have no understanding that you are a human. They would be absolutely horrific to be around. But no, they would die because nobody would take care of them because they'd be alone. Erawan Tree question, do you know a mantra for Chitra Moon? My son is Chitra Moon. I don't give out those kinds of mantras. It's just not that easy. I need to know all kinds of things. So I can't. I would if I had their whole chart. Because I do. When I give astrology readings, I give mantras based on where the moon is placed. And I go through this whole thing based on what syllable is associated with the 1st, 5th, and the 9th house. So the Chitra Moon, you don't want to give him a mantra for Chitra Moon. You want to give him a mantra for the 1st, 5th, and 9th house from Chitra Moon. Okay, so don't just start throwing. It's also, don't start throwing mantras at people, even if you think you know what you're doing, because you never know. You never know if that's what they need or not. You should always get an astrologer. And there are plenty of spiritual teachers out there, really well-known spiritual teachers who give out mantras who have no idea what they're doing because they don't know what the astrology of the person is. And they don't know what planets and houses they're stimulating. So I wouldn't give that to you even if I could. I need to, if you want me to take a look at your son's chart, you want to buy a reading from me, I'll take a look at it and I'll give you a mantra for him. Koya Moon, that's not a question. Again, try and avoid talking to each other. What else? Where am I? Yeah, please. The crosstalk is making things challenging for me. Richard T. question. I asked you about ego death because I'm trying to work out what I need to do to resolve my past trauma and move forward with my life. Get some help. Again, think about your question. You weren't asking me about how to resolve your past trauma. Like, I don't even know what your past trauma is. I can't even answer the question without knowing what your past trauma is. And that's not going to happen unless, again, people, I don't know what kind of personal work you've done. The question makes me think you haven't done any, like gone and sought out help. You're on your own trying to figure it out. A brain surgeon cannot do brain surgery on themselves. You're going to need to get targeted counseling from a spiritual teacher or from somebody, a therapist, somebody. I'm glad that you're trying to resolve your past trauma, but how can you know how to do that if you don't know what to do? If you haven't worked with somebody who knows how or has worked through that trauma, you will have no idea what you're doing. So you're asking again in such a general way, and even past trauma is so general, moving forward with your life. I don't know are you trying to escape the pain? I don't know what that means. So my best answer to you is get some targeted help. If you want to work with me, you can go to thunderwizard.com and sign up as an apprentice and work with me on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. And then I'll be able to ask you a bunch of questions, and then I'll be able to give you targeted advice on how to resolve it and work past it. There's not a general pill. You got to get specific, and you usually need to get help from somebody else. I do. I have to get help from somebody else. I can't fix myself. There's a lot of things I've learned that I can fix myself I couldn't do before, but when it comes to really taking a look at myself, I got to go to my teacher, and I got to say I'm going blah, 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 and I got to have him, give me the bitter medicine that I give you guys. Okay? Black Earth Productions question: in context of this period and Odin's resurrections, could you say that its weakness revealing itself to force that change? Otherwise, be speared on a loop, hanging yourself over and over? Well, I would agree with that assessment. I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. I mean, that was my experience. I should just maybe limit to myself. That was my experience. That these were my illusions, my delusions that I wasn't aware of. That I had warning signs. I just came out of just such a horrifically toxic experience, and there were warning signs going into it, and I was bypassing them because I had an agenda that I wanted to experience based on my own, unresolved issues. And I got my ass handed to me in pieces. So that was exactly my experience. So I think that's a pretty good way of putting it. Wanderer, question: your book on the runes, you mentioned Nauthij and its meaning reversed. This threw me for a loop. Through, T-H-R-U-G-H. You mean T-H-R-E-W, the past tense of throw. Through is another word. This threw me for a loop, as I have always heard and understood that Nauthij has no reverse. It's been a long time since I wrote that book, and you're right. I have changed my thought about that. Nauthij does not have a reverse. So please take a look at the difference between the word through, T-H-R-O-U-G-H, and T-H-R-E-W. Sorry, I got a thing about words. All right, I must have been neglected because I'm a total psycho. That's funny. All right, no more questions at the moment. So we talked a little bit about that. We talked about energy work. So while I take a break here, I am going to show you the most powerful energy practice in my experience, which will give that what is that chemical that's released in the brain? Anyway, the chemical that is the active chemical in ayahuasca. You can create it within yourself, and you can do that through high-level energy work without any side effects. So I'm going to share that with you now for a couple minutes. I'm going to take a break. I'll come back if there's any more questions. I will answer them. Hi, I'm Michael Denny of SpiritTao.com, and this is Celestial Negung Part 1. Celestial Negung means that this is power that is descending from heaven. And the idea is that we are all microcosms of the entire universe. You are the entire universe, and everything around you is simply the projection. You are looking within yourself. So when you look up into the stars at night, you're actually looking deep within your own body. When you look at the sun, the moon, the trees, the flowers, you're looking within yourself. This is Negung. And so what we're doing is we're simply releasing that infinity from within us. You are tapping into and releasing the power that is within our own body, our own cells, our own organs. So one of the reasons that I'm making this DVD is in the hope that the essence and the spirit of the teaching of the Shang Qing arts can be taught to the world at large, and it is my hope that the core essence of what the Shang Qing tradition is will continue to live and grow and evolve. As we move on into the Aquarian age, everything is changing. I don't need to tell you that. The entire world is changing, and what we are seeing now is that if people hold on to external things they are very challenged in life. And those who are making the transition into the next phase that we are moving into in the world as we approach 2012, those who look within and find their source of strength from within, those are the people who are getting the most out of life and will make the transition into the next phase of evolution most comfortably. It is my belief that the Shang Qing tradition is one method whereby human beings can evolve into the next level of being in the most comfortable fashion and be able to take advantage of the rapid, energetic, mental, and spiritual changes that are going on in the world today. Coming in 2009. Can you believe it? That was over 10 years ago. Still my most powerful service and my most popular service, and there's a reason for it. I'm not tooting my own horn. People have come to me who are masters in other Qigong traditions, Tai Chi traditions, and they've practiced celestial Qigong, and they've come back and they've said, I've never experienced anything that powerful before. I've had people, and I'm not suggesting this will happen for you, but I've had people get back to me and say, I started doing it and this being appeared to me with the blue light and the blood. No idea what that is, but I believe in that practice, and I think if you really want all the things that are supposedly the benefits of doing high level anything, I think you can't get anything more powerful than that. That's been my experience. While I'm here, subscribe, hit the bell button so you know when I'm uploading a video. Best way to support the channel is to go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe at whatever level. $25 a month gets you access to hundreds and hundreds of hours of Mastery Shamanism course. I go into depth. I mean, I so many videos, hundreds and hundreds of hours of videos, which will give you mastery of shamanism, energy work, ritual, working with the elements, working with runes, all that kind of stuff. Astrology.thunderwizard.com. If you want to find out what 3 planets want to help you with your 3 minds, and if you want to find out what your particular projection that you give to the world that will give you success, if you don't know what your projection is, you won't know how to make yourself successful, and a bunch of other things, you can go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. Career.thunderwizard.com if you want to find out what your true career is. The universe is set up in such a way where that if you are following your true path, the universe will pay you money. The universe will pay you money to be your authentic self. Your authentic self is not what something or somebody else wants you to be. Your authentic self is what makes you happy. In other words, you won't ever have to work again. I don't work. I do this. I make videos. I deal with clients. People could say, yeah, did you do any work today? Yeah, I dealt with a client. I made a video. And actually, I worked with a bunch of clients today. But it's not work. I love doing it. I love my life. I don't work. So if you know what your true soul path is, which I can help you, I can usually help people. It takes me sometimes a little less than an hour, but there hasn't been anybody so far that I haven't been able to help them pinpoint exactly what they need to, or at least which direction to go. But if you know that, then you never have to work again. The universe will pay you to be your most authentic, happy self. And then qigong.thunderwizard.com. Take a look at that. All those links are there for a reason. If you want to see everything I have, all of my books, all of my books, all of my teachings, everything, then you want to go to courses.thunderwizard.com, right up there. And you can do neo.thunderwizard.com. I'm going to phase it out because nobody's doing it. And it's very saddening for me because I've condensed into 4 different steps how to get absolutely everything out of this universe. And if you follow all four of those tools, in my experience, you will have the tools to be able to know how to get the universe to obey your commands. So it's saddening to me people haven't been taking advantage of it, but eventually I'm just going to completely phase that out because nobody wants it. There's no point in offering it. All right, so I'll take a look and see if there are any other questions. If not, we'll call it a day. So let's see here. Okay, so Richard's already subscribed to my Patreon. Well, being subscribed to my Patreon doesn't mean that you're working with me one-on-one, which is what I was saying to you. You can't heal yourself. It's great that you're subscribed to Patreon. But if you're in a place where you need to overcome your traumas in order to move on with your life, you're not going to be able to do that unless you get somebody sticking their hands in your brain and moving things around. You got to get targeted help. One of the sad ironies about people who need the most help, they're the most resistant to getting help. So you're going to have to get some targeted help. Get some help from somebody. You know, if you don't want to work with me, find somebody to help you, because otherwise you're just going to be asking these questions in the dark. How do I die to myself? How do I overcome my traumas? What trauma? I don't know. You need to get more specific about it, and with that, you can't do that unless you get, drop your ego. You want to die to your ego? Ask for help. You want to know how to go through an ego death? Stick your hand out and pay somebody money and say, "Can you help me with my problems?" That's the first step. How's that? Okay, Black Earth Productions questions in context to the period known as, did you say that? Oh, I already answered that question. No more questions. All right, I don't see any more questions. So that's it. I'm going to call it a day. Is there anything else that I want to say about this? No. I mean, it's just a subject that there's really no end to it. We've just scratched the surface on this. In passing, what I'll say is the best thing you can do is be kind to yourself. And look, if there's something that you need to do to take care of yourself, do it. Do that really difficult thing you've been putting off. Whatever that difficult thing is that you know that you need to do for yourself, now's the time to do it. You won't get a better time with the energies because you've just now had a revelation, and the danger is if you don't follow through, then you'll be even more deeply entrenched in your delusion. That's what happens when we deny. The universe will give us windows of opportunity where we will wake up and go, holy crap, I gotta quit drinking, I gotta quit smoking, I gotta quit gambling, I gotta quit running around not dealing with my issues. And if you don't take advantage of that window of opportunity, that's Ketu, taking away your resistance to looking at the pain. But if you don't follow through, Rahu's going to go, well, Ketu, he's obviously not following through, so I am going to drive him deeper in his own delusion, and his pain will be more. And then Ketu says, all right, I'll wait around for the next time, and then we'll try again. So now's the time. Now's the time to take that action. Not to say, any time is a good time, but I'm just saying that the influences that are on you now will give you more strength than you've had before, and don't waste your time. There's no point in waiting when it comes to your own happiness. All right. I don't see any more questions here. So again, that's it. All right, my friends. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys on the flip-flop.